Welcome to Creative Chat, the show in which creativity is celebrated and explored with a little therapy thrown in. Each show brings artists from different modalities together to discuss their art, their creative process, and how we all are interconnected. Tune in today to find out how with your host, Dr. Judi Bloom, and entertainer, Richard Skipper.
Hello, Judi.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful today.
Well, it's Thursday. The sun is shining here. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in New York. What's it like down in Florida?
Gorgeous. We couldn't ask for better weather. So a little warm, but beautiful.
And one of our guests is actually in Fire Island today. So she is, sitting on the beach looking beautiful as always. I am so excited about today's show because three friends of mine are here, and I'm sure they will be friends of yours and friends of our audience as well. All three of them have events that are coming up. So I wanted to bring them on to talk about this. But before we get there, I want to take a moment to talk about one of my favorite entertainers, a true artist, and that was Tina Turner.
Yeah, I interviewed her years ago when I was doing TV news for ABC in Philadelphia at the time, and she was performing at the Forum in Philadelphia on a double bill with Rod Stewart. And I did a live shot with both Tina Turner and Rod Stewart. It was amazing, and she was just the most gracious, wonderful, sweet, warm person in real life. Just fantastic person.
Well, she's the same age as my mom. Mm-hmm. And I always used to tease my mom. I'd go, why don't you move like that? Because they were the same exact age. And you've heard everyone talking about her life and career and her legacy. But what I really love about her, and of course, we had Marian Alda on the show a few weeks ago, is her major success happened after she was 40. Yeah. And, the first African-American woman to be on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. And it was, I think, 12 Grammys and one a milestone after the next. Yeah. And think about this, to have a movie made about your life that has inspired so many people, to have a Broadway show about your life. She is the pinnacle for me. And I unfortunately never got a chance to see her live. Yeah. And that is truly one of the biggest regrets of my life.
Yeah, she was phenomenal in person. Truly phenomenal in person. And those legs, to die for.
Well, I'm going to talk about somebody else who's, all of our guests are phenomenal. Our first guest that I'm bringing on, and I'm going to bring her on so she can hear what I have to say about her. I have said this before. There are certain artists that you meet, and I know the word artist is thrown around a lot, but Natalie Douglas is a true artist. I still remember walking into Broadway Baby in the 80s and hearing her sing Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. And with all respect to Barbra Streisand, who until that moment, that to me was the definitive version. But Natalie's version of this, and I've said this to you before, Natalie, and she probably gets tired of me saying it still stays with me. And I have had the great fortune of sharing the stage with Natalie, being in the audience with Natalie so many times, and we're lucky to have her today because she never stops. Forget the ever-ready bunny. It's Natalie Douglas, who is constantly working. And kudos to you, Natalie, and congratulations. And before we dig in, and I'm hopefully going to get it on here, I just sent it to Danny to see if he could transfer it to an MP4. You have performed in a tribute to Tina Turner. Did you ever see her perform live?
Yeah, not only did I see her perform live, but when I was little, she lived in our neighborhood. And so I knew her first as Ronnie and Craig's mom. You know, there are these two boys who would hang out around the neighborhood, and she would come and call them in, you know, for dinner or whatever. So I knew her as this adorable mom in knee socks and like a plaid skirt, you know. And it wasn't until, I don't even know, I think it was maybe 7 or 8, I saw her on television and thought, wait, is she? Oh, like it, you know, suddenly dawned on me that she could be this ferocious, like, powerhouse on stage. And then she was just one of the nice moms. And exactly what Judi said, she was so kind and so funny and so, like, chill, you know, just the most warm and gracious person, and not at all like the woman who's tearing up the stage, you know, that she was when she performed, which was a great lesson in like how you don't have to be on all the time, you know, and how I still think to this day, and you know, Richard and I, we've had this conversation. I think the greatest talents in this world are also the greatest people. So often, you know, when someone has enormous talent, that's not the person who walks around backstage lording it over other people or trying to get their way, or, you know, don't you know who I am? Like, that's not those people. The greatest talents are there. You know, I was in a Patti LaBelle taping many years ago, and Patti got hungry, and she looked at all of us, and at the time I was working with a production company that she was working with, and she looked at everybody, not just the team and the staff and her staff, but the audience. And she said, is anybody else hungry? And she ordered fried chicken for 200 people. You know, like, and she didn't have to do that.
You know, it's funny because, and I've heard of people who have worked with her, that she comes to rehearsal with her famous macaroni and cheese and her fried chicken and everything.
Yeah.
And she is, you know, and of course, I was lucky enough to have as a friend Sarah Dash.
Oh, me too. She was so lovely.
And the stories that she would tell about her. And, you know, I was scheduled to interview Sarah, and she passed away before we were to do our second interview. She was just absolutely, but I agree with you. And another thing, and I'm glad that you bring this up, because I don't think you can hide it. I don't think that you can actually come on and pretend to be anything that you truly are not. And if you are a mean or a nasty person, I think that's going to come through in your performance.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I interviewed, you know, when I was doing TV news, especially when I was in both Philadelphia and Los Angeles, I was interviewing lots and lots and lots of celebrities, right? And, you know, almost to a person, exactly what you're talking about, it was true, that the bigger the star, the better, the greater person you were, you know. And I feel that is because they don't have to prove anything anymore. You know? So they're comfortable with themselves, and when you're comfortable with yourself, you radiate that, and other people really pick that up. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Natalie, you brought up something that I want to go back to because I want to talk about
Sure.
you. You talk about seeing her, you know, without the accoutrements of fame and fortune and all of that going with it. You also, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, you are constantly, it seems to me, as an outsider, are on the treadmill. And what I mean by that is you are constantly putting out product. You know, you've been in residency at Birdland, and every month you bring in a brand new show. And I was lucky enough, I saw you last summer, as you know, in Provincetown, where I will be on August 5th, just putting that when you were there last year, you were doing a show about Lena Horne and other women that had inspired you. And I know, and I want to bring this up because coming up next week, for those of you who will be around, you're going to be performing Carmel, a show called Songs of the 60s. And if that wasn't enough, just a few, 2 weeks later, you're doing this Juneteenth Jubilee. When you put these shows together, first of all, how are you constantly learning all this? I want to know your secret.
Well, it's weird. There are certain songs that are very easy to learn. A few years ago, I put together a Roberta Flack show for the first time. And the hardest thing about that show was that at the time, there was no bio on Roberta, and there was no documentary about her life. Just this January, American Masters released a beautiful film about her life. But the hardest thing about that show was actually doing all the research, because I had to go to individual interviews that happened to be captured on YouTube, or articles. I had to look through magazines and newspapers for the last 60 years, But the songs, for some reason, they just went right into my brain and they stayed. I got those. Some of them, of course, I've been hearing since I was a kid, but a lot of them, I try to find things that are new to me when I do a show too. And some of they just went in really easily. Other shows are harder. Joni Mitchell, whom I adore, and those songs I have listened to since I was a tot, and I love them with all my heart. But getting those lyrics, they're so beautiful. They're so woven, that you can't get a word wrong. You can't. If you do, then you're screwed for the rest of the song, So that was tricky. It just depends on the show. But I love it. I love sharing my love for these artists. Obviously, I don't do a tribute to somebody I don't love. That would be weird. I don't care for him. Maybe you do. That would be strange. I love to find the stories that are a little bit off the beaten path, because, the stories that we find on their Wikipedia page, or the ones that we all know because we've heard over and over again, those stories are fun to relate, of course. But I want to find something that maybe people who have a glancing experience with the performer doesn't already know. And so, that part's really fun for me. And I feel like once I'm in the head of this is the material, I always start with 45 songs and have to narrow it down. Then it's really easy to just work it until it gets there. I will say, last year we did the tribute series from 2017 through 2020, monthly, basically. The first time we only did 4 in a row, so that was 4 months of that year. But then we kept building so that in 2019 rather, we did 11 shows. Each show was a different artist every month, and I feel like the work is all of the pieces, the research piece and getting that in my brain and figuring out what stories to tell and having way more information than I could possibly share. Because of who I am, politically speaking, there's usually an activist portion in terms of who the artist was, because most of these artists are they follow what Nina Simone said, that an artist has to be an activist too, by virtue of most of them being Black, but not all, but also by virtue of moving in the world. And if you have a platform and you have a voice, it's on you to use it to the betterment of the world, I think. And so, I work to find those stories or songs in some cases, like with people like Dolly Parton, who doesn't take political stances, but you can tell in terms of the work she does, behind the scenes. And the things she does that she doesn't even get credit for. There are a number of Black high schools in Tennessee and in Georgia, throughout the South, that can trace their uniforms and their band uniforms and their instruments to a gift from Dolly Parton. She wants to make sure that no kid is as poor as she was when she grew up, because she didn't know she was poor. She had a great family. She had a great imagination. She had music. And so she didn't feel like she was poor. And she doesn't want any kid to feel like they don't have, what they need. So yeah, I find those kind of stories. And then I work the songs, and I find the stories in the songs that I want to tell. And sometimes I have great good luck and they just go in and stay like that. And sometimes I did have one show that was like, the travel was too much, because I'm usually gone like 2 weeks out of the month, and that month I was gone up until the day of the show, and I'll try not to do that ever again, because that show, I'd say, I remember it as like not having a single lyric, but when I watched the video, which I didn't do for a couple months because I was so traumatized, it wasn't that bad. but it felt like it to me. Oh my God.
Well, I want you to stick around.
Juneteenth Jubilee is going to be. I mean, what's going to be different about that?
Well, in this instance, we're not celebrating one individual artist. We're celebrating, the contributions of many Black artists. And in particular, I did a Juneteenth Jubilee for the first time last year, because last year the holiday fell on the 20th, which was the Monday after. And this year it falls on the Monday. So this year, I'm in particular concentrating on songs of the 60s, songs of the Civil Rights Movement, because one of the moments that Juneteenth kind of came back to the national platform before, the last 3 years when it's become a national holiday, was in the 60s, when Black artists and activists spoke about it more in the mainstream, and some people heard of it then for the first time, even though it's been a holiday for Black people since 1865.
Well, I want you to stick around.
Yep, I am.
We're going to bring on our next guest, and
I love them.
I do too, and most of you out there know that I spent 20 years performing as Carol Channing, and again, you have to love that person to do that for that long, and luckily, I'm happy to say she loved me too, so that was a good one. So I am going to bring on, but before I bring her on, I'm going to show a very quick clip of hers, and I'm hoping to still get your clip on before the end of the show.
Sure, baby.
So here she is, the one and only Quinn Lemley as Rita Hayworth.
Once was a shooting up in the Klondike when they got dancing. Folks were putting the blame on the lady known as Lou. I get you hungry for dinner at 8. I like the theater, but never go late. Amado mio, love me forever and let forever begin tonight. Put the blame on me.
And here she is. You are muted. No, there you are. Good. So, first of all, I know that you also do a tribute to Queen.
Yes.
Is that right? And one of your musicians was also one of the main musicians with Tina Turner. So
Yes,
there's that 6 degrees of separation.
Yes, we did the Ultimate Queen celebration, and Aurelian was the lead guitarist on Tina on Broadway.
Wow.
So
Now,
much fun.
Did you ever see her perform live?
No, I never had the opportunity to. And now I'm like, I gotta start seeing everybody that is touring now. Diana Ross is out there. Hi, Natalie. Hi,
Quinn.
Barry Manilow is coming in next week, and I'm trying to get tickets to go see him next week. I've never seen him live. But he's going to be at Radio City Music Hall next week, if any one of you are going to be in New York. Quinn, I don't mean, as I said to Judi a couple of weeks ago, we had Marian Alda on the show. And I don't know, Natalie and Quinn, if you are familiar with her work, but go and see her. She's an amazing woman who has devoted her years later now to fighting ageism. And not giving away age or anything, but Quinn, I think you've been doing Rita as long as I was doing Carol, because we did so many events together.
We did a lot of events
We
together.
did a lot of events together. What has changed as you've gotten older playing Rita Hayworth? Because we all know, and it's a part of your show as well, that she suffered with Alzheimer's at the end of her life. And as you are aging into this role, what has changed in terms of the way that you see her and the way that she really shades what you do?
That's such a good question, Richard. It's interesting, during COVID, my writer, director, Carter Inskeep, rewrote the entire book. And so she's older. She's an older soul. She's saltier. She's making discoveries about the choices that she made, and she is owning the choices that she made. And kind of just, there's a lot of discovery in the show, and I'm dealing with so many issues, not just the Alzheimer's, alcoholism, about being aging in Hollywood in the 40s and 50s. I mean, that was really, really hard. By the time you were 35, you were a woman with a past. And once you have children, you're used goods. And but she was a parent, and she had her own production company. But she worked for Columbia for 20 years, and Harry Cohn was like infamous, and he was always having sex in his office, and his idol was Mussolini, and she was a piece of meat, and for him, and for a lot of her husbands as well. Her first husband, and then Orson Welles was her second husband, and then she was a princess, but Ali Khan went to bed with Gilda and woke up with her. That was the yeah. So there are so many facets to this show, so many topics, and we've done a lot of benefits for the Alzheimer's Foundation, which we've done our activism, Natalie, giving back, because we always have to give back. I mean, that's part of being an artist.
But one of the things that I love about you, I mean, you have always been a very strong-willed woman yourself in terms of the way that you have pursued your career. And like Natalie, you're tireless. I mean, and as you find that you're getting older, right now, COVID did a number on all of us. And I'm 62, and and not. God bless both of you. You performed during COVID. I was here doing what I'm doing right now, and I'm starting to get out there again. And and I feel for myself as if I'm just starting over. It all feels so new to me, and especially pursuing a career as Richard, as opposed to doing Carol for so many years. It truly is starting over. As the business has changed, how has it changed for the better for you, and how has it gotten harder, if you will?
Well, I mean, being a woman, and I just think being creative and producing and directing has really been great for me. And directing my tribute shows, I did Rebel, The Many Lives of David Bowie, the Ultimate Queen celebration was with Marc Martel, and now I have another French Canadian singer, Yvonne Pedneau, and then I did Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Wall. And I bring very theatrical elements into that, and Paul and I did that. And I just wanted to mention, Richard, that yes, performing, I came back to Don't Tell Mamas, which I had been headlining casinos and performing arts centers for the past 20 years. And Paul, I hadn't performed for 2 years. I was producing and directing, but I hadn't been performing. And so Paul said, you need to go back where you started and be in an intimate space. And then I'm going back into theaters in November. So I have a 7-month residency I just opened on Monday and at Don't Tell Mamas. And it was really, in terms of aging and life, it was the first time I stood on the stage and Paul wasn't there. My husband died unexpectedly 2 months ago. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So it was, I'm in this part of my life where like I'm saying yes to everything. And I'm here on Fire Island with my friends, and I'm going to France in 2 weeks, to the south of France and Paris. And I'm just saying yes. And I'm finding that I'm just fearless. I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose.
I hope you don't mind my going where I'm about to go with this. But not only did Paul pass away, and I am so sorry. I hope you got my message when I called.
I did. I wrote you back.
But you also, Elliot Ames was such a supporter of yours that I thought, oh my God, because they both passed away within close proximity.
Within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks of each other.
I wrote that article for Cabaret Scenes on him.
How do you deal, with the grieving process? You also, many people work through it to keep working and to doing what they need to do, but how were you able to just forge through this without that support system around you that was always there for you?
Well, I through my work, through by just doing, and I found the first thing I knew to do with after Paul died, because I didn't know what to do, was make an omelet. I was like, Julia Child, I'm going to cook, and I've been surrounded by friends and family through this whole process. My support group and the music community has been just incredible, and I've just said yes to things. And I think that Paul would have wanted me to do that, because through my work and through my being, I'm bringing his legacy. I'm living his legacy. He was my best friend. Natalie, I know you have such a wonderful marriage and relationship, and Paul was my best friend, and Danny with you, Richard. I really have had 20 years of walking the walk with my manager, my producer, my best friend, my soulmate, my lover, my partner in life, and we did everything together. And so I think that he'd be really mad at me if I shriveled up and went inward.
I would be mad at you if you did that.
Well, I've got friends like you, Richard, and I cannot wait for you to be back on stage.
Yeah, I'm excited, but
I'm excited to interview
so Paul, God bless you, and I'm sure that him and Tina are having a good.
They're having fun, and Rita Hayworth. I just felt like I felt like, having gone through this, like my character just became so much richer and deeper, and the only thing I knew to do was to be on that stage and to work through it, because his laugh wasn't there, and his applause, and I could feel the emptiness of where he would sit every show, and yet he was there. I know he was there, because energy never dies. And
That's true. Anything that you want to say, Judi, before we bring on our next guest?
No, I just think, Quinn, you're doing exactly what you need to do. You're taking your grief and using it to help your own creative being, and to be who you are, and in a way that would make your husband proud, right?
I think so. I think too, when you go through that kind of grief, to lose Elliot 2 weeks before, and I was with Elliot the night he died. I had to play all those Joe Moody songs, because Elliot only wanted to listen to songs that were written, before 1950. And I sang to him, and what was so amazing, Natalie, I know you know this, the power of music, because as he was passing, like I could see Elliot when I would sing That's All. It was one of his favorite songs. His eyes would just shine, and he'd look up, and it was like he was transported to another time in his life. Music is that powerful, and I think that's part of the healing.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said if everybody would begin every day with a show tune, there'd be no strife in the world.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I heard Annie Ross shortly before she passed at Birdland talk about the song she wrote called Music is Forever. And before she sang it, she said, she talked about memories, and she talked about sitting on a bench when she was 16 in Paris with Billy Strayhorn next to her, teaching her how to sing Lush Life, you know. And so my little mind is just like, ah! And she said that all those people are gone, you know, all of her touchstones, all the people that taught her when she was young and learning about this music. But because each one of those people put themselves 100% into anything they created, a song they wrote, a song they sang, a recording of a live performance, they were 100% there. So that means that when we celebrate it, when we listen to it, when we sing the song, they come back.
Yes.
You know, they can never really be gone, because 100% of the essence of who they are is in that moment. And I, you know, burst into tears just sitting at the bar at Birdland, weeping and smiling, because that's such a great image. That's such a, and as you said, energy doesn't go anywhere. You know, there isn't any way in the world to get rid of matter. When something exists, it exists. You can break it into a zillion pieces, and no matter how tiny, down at the atomic level, it's still there. So I can't believe that our souls would be the one thing in the universe that just disappears. That makes no sense, you know. So we exist beyond the here. We just don't know what that form is. But I love the idea that we're existing in the things we create. And anyone who loves that legacy, you know, is part of our existence then forever. That's just so cool.
That is so beautiful.
What you mentioned about, you know, when you sing a certain song, you hear a certain song, it brings back that time in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an NPR show down here in South Florida, Southwest Florida, where I live, called Biography Through Music. And they have various musicians come on and talk about what inspired them at different points in their life. And they have to pick 3 songs and then tell the story of why that song was so meaningful to them at that point in their life.
That's cool.
That
It's
is
really
so cool.
It's really fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring on our next guest, but before I do so, I saw an interview once with Billie Holiday, and they said, you know, after her version of Good Morning Heartache, for example, they said no one else should ever sing that song. And she said that is the worst thing that you could say to a singer, because every song is to be sung by other singers with their own life story and their own life lessons coming after that. And I thought that was a brilliant thing to say. Well, speaking of which, this man has been waiting very patiently in the wings. Come close. Thank you for being here. And I do want to mention that, I mean, you've got an event coming up that how many years has this been going on now?
Well,
eighth annual.
The graphic kind of gives it away. The 8th annual Harvard-Yale cantata. I came up with it. I think we skipped a year in 2020. It wasn't quite easy to do live shows. So in maybe 2015 was the first year. I've just been trying to do fun stuff and trying to do interesting things. And what you were saying before about Quinn and Natalie being tireless, I do think of myself as tireless as well. I've been producing a lot of shows. And so I came up with this idea because I was working with a young music director who named Madeline Smith, who went to Harvard. And she was 22 and I was 62. But it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter when what you have is common interest. In fact, nothing matters when you have common interest. It can cross racial and gender and age boundaries because you have something that you love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to get back to where we started with this. Tina Turner, did you ever see her perform live, or did she, I mean, is there any impact that she has left? When you think about Tina Turner, what are some of the thoughts that go through your mind? Because I think of me, I came to New York in 1979, and her second career, as I like to refer to it, really took off around the same time. And she is the soundtrack to my early years in New York.
She's the soundtrack to my sort of, I guess, teenage years. I remember, Ike and Tina Turner Revue. And Proud, they did a hot version of Proud Mary.
Yes.
And so that's what I mostly think of. I think the later part of her career, I was moving on and concentrating on other things and not so much listening to Tina Turner.
Now, you mentioned earlier, I mean, you also are tireless in this business, and you're a producer, and you wear so many different hats. And I know that you're involved in so many different areas of the business. Is there one particular hat that you feel that you wear the most comfortably? And obviously, this is something you enjoy doing. This cantata that you bring back in 8 years, and that seems to be the theme today with all of us who have had these long-term positions in the business. You have been very successful with this. Which of the hats do you feel that you wear the most comfortably?
It all starts with songwriting. And I think that probably for everybody on this call, it all starts with one thing. You do other things because you have to do other things, or because you find that doing other things is going to further the one thing that you love. But what I love is songwriting. And all of the shows that I'm on several boards of theaters. I produce a lot of shows, but all of what I do is in the furtherance of songwriting. I'm all about living songwriters. I think every show that I produce has songs written by living songwriters. Not that I don't love Gershwin. Nobody loves Gershwin more than I do, but the Gershwins have had their day, and there's lots of other people promoting Gershwin. I'm promoting living songwriters.
And
or the recently deceased. Sometimes I run a series called Gone But Not Forgotten, but we'll get into that too. Sorry, Judi.
Your focus on children's theater. I want to hear more about that. What got you into that?
Right. Children's theater, there are so few opportunities for songwriters. Whatever you guys think about performers and how difficult it is to be a performer, try being a writer sometime in this world. It's very tough. And there is a children's theater company called TheaterWorks USA, which is a great company. I've actually now, in my way of giving back, I'm on the board of directors of TheaterWorks. But back in the day, I created several shows for them, not so much because my goal was to write for children, but because those were where the jobs were. You go where the jobs are, and you go. There's nothing so intoxicating to a songwriter as having somebody want your song. That's the thing that motivates me. It's not money. I mean, if there's money, hey, great. But if Natalie tells me, Tom, I got to have a song to open my show in 3 weeks, or if Quinn says, if only I had a song about, well, I don't know what, Quinn, you might want a song about, but I would be motivated to write it. I just hosted an event for Urban Stages 2 nights ago, and they needed a song. I wrote a song called, get this, I wrote a song called Stress Balls, because they gave out stress balls in the bag of swag at the end of the evening. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my God, that's perfect. Stress balls.
What did it rhyme with?
Oh, well, there's a lot of rhymes for stress, a lot of rhymes for stress. And there's a lot of rhymes for balls too. I think I mostly rhymed it with. Well, I know one of the lines said, "Tomorrow I might give up alcohol. I love the high I get from my stress ball."
Natalie, I just want to let you know there's a little feedback coming through. I don't know. It's like something where I'm getting some. There's some feedback coming. So
I don't know what that could be.
No.
Okay.
But I just wanted to let you know about that. So one of the things that I want to do is I do a lot of reading. One of my favorite writers is Julia Cameron of The Artist Way. I begin each day with my morning pages, and I do a lot of reading about the creative process. So I want to have a little fun with all of you, and Judi as well. So I've got 4 mystery questions, first of all, 1 through 4. And Judi, I'm going to let you pick the first one, 1 through 4, and just see how creative you are with the answer that you come up with.
All right, number 3.
And the question is, make sure someone gets the credit they deserve. So now is the time for you to give someone in your career the credit that they deserve today.
Okay. Well, credit for my initial career, which was with television, right? That would go to a guy who is no longer with us. His name is Mark Monsky, and he was the managing editor at WNEW TV in New York, which is where I started right out of Cornell. And they took a chance on a 20-year-old kid and helped me, get into doing major reporting, including doing undercover work and all kinds of things that TV news hadn't really been doing much of at that time. And I was literally the only woman in the newsroom at that time.
Wow.
So,
well, I'm glad that has changed.
Yeah.
Because it has changed in the industry, thank God. Natalie, a number 1 through 3.
Can I choose number 4?
Well,
choose number 3. I thought that was 3. Okay, 2 then.
If you want to pick number 4, I pulled from the original deck, so I'm going to go with you. And it says, identify a cause of conflict in a relationship and take steps to resolve it. So we're not going to give away any names here, but in this business, we all deal with conflict. What do you consider, without giving away any names or anything, the biggest conflict that you feel that you've encountered so far in your career, and how did you get through it?
Well, it is ongoing, and it is, quite honestly, there are times when I feel the need to bring to someone's attention that a project is too monochrome, and by that I mean too white, because that happens a lot. And when that happens, I find the best way to deal with it is to be direct and private. I don't call people out on social media unless I really have to. And sometimes that works great. Sometimes it works really, really well. I know Tom and I had a conversation about this months ago when we happened to run into each other at a show. And within maybe a week or 2, he had reached out to me and said, give me some names of performers of color that I can reach out to. And because I have something coming up, because he's always busy. And I don't want it to look like that. And that was amazing. I was so thrilled and delighted that conversation, because it was literally in passing at another show, had resonated with him, and that he heard me. And sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes people get mad at me and decide to never work with me again, and that's how they choose to deal with it. But it's something I've been fighting for 30 years in this business, and I'm never going to stop, because I don't know if you saw a picture that I posted today on Instagram, but I was just in Oklahoma a week before last. I was in San Francisco last week, but in Oklahoma, these 3 little girls, 8, 6, and 5, who are adopted, black girls who were adopted by a white family, were feeling ugly. Someone on the playground said to one of the girls she wouldn't play with her because her skin was dirty. Oh. And so their mom brought them to see me backstage before a show and told me that story and asked me to speak with them. So I spoke to the eldest, the one it happened to, and she was the most beautiful, charming, delightful child. But you know what? She would have been worthy of that conversation if she was a pain in the butt. It didn't matter. Like, she was gorgeous and wonderful, but if she was awful, she still shouldn't be talked to like that. And so I talked with her for a while, and we had a very good time, and she was so adorable. And then she saw the show, and her mom told me that she got home and said to her baby sisters, I met Natalie, and she was on stage, and she sang great, and she was funny too, and she's brown like us. And I burst into tears. Like, that changed that little girl's life in that moment, in a moment she needed, just because I showed up and did what I do. So I'm always going to fight for there to be room for people who look like me, people who are AAPI, people who are Indigenous, people who are Latinx, people who are queer, people who are non-binary. I'm always going to fight for the stages to look like the world, because every time a little kid sees somebody who looks like them, somebody who shares their story, it changes a life forever, so it's worth doing. So that's my biggest conflict, probably.
Well, first of all, I want to applaud you for actually speaking out, because a lot of people feel it, and I'm sure Judi will agree with me on this. A lot of people feel it, but a lot of people don't speak out. I lead a book group, and the book that we're reading right now, as a matter of fact, we have a session tonight at 7 o'clock, and we're reading the 4 Agreements. And I don't know if you've all read the 4 Agreements, but the 4 Agreements are never take anything personally, be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, and it's not about you. And so it's important that you do speak out. And so, Natalie, I applaud you for that. So thank you. Because, a lot of times people are afraid to speak out for fear that they are going to lose work. There's a question that I want to ask each of you because of something that you brought up earlier, Natalie. But I want to ask you, Quinn, first of all, to pick a number 1 through 3, and I'm going to get back to you, Natalie, in a moment. 1 through 3.
1.
And your question is, it says pay it forward. Give this, share this show today with someone that you think needs to hear the message that we're talking about today. With everything that we've covered, is there anything that you feel that you've had this conversation on any of the levels that we've discussed with another person, and you feel that they need to hear what we're talking about today?
Yes, I do. My costume designer, he lost his sister she took her life 6 months ago, and he's really, they weren't that close, but he's trying to deal with it. And I think that his creative process, and he's been paying it forward, working with design and costumes at a high school for performing arts in New Jersey. And it's a very mixed group of kids, which is so wonderful to see all of these productions that they're doing. And they are having, mixed casts and so on, and at a young age. And I think that he will enjoy this program, because we've touched on so many elements of the creative process and authenticity and paying it forward. And I just, the whole creative process, I think, is moving energy into the world and giving to other people, connecting. And I'm definitely going to share this program with him.
Thank you. Tom, there are 2 cards left, 1 or 2.
There are 2 left. Oh, wow. Okay. So 2.
And your card is, use your skills to empower someone else today. Well, you've empowered us, but how do you use your skills as a songwriter to empower others?
Oh, wow. That's a... everybody answers the question these days by first saying, that's a good question. Well, that's a good question. But that is really a good question, because it is something that I believe in. Songwriting is hard, and this world is hard, and promotion is hard, and self-promotion is hard, and self-promotion is unattractive, or can be. But promoting somebody else is not unattractive. So I guess maybe I call it like self-interested altruism. I do a lot for other songwriters. I run a songwriting group that I started 7 years ago. Bernie Fershpan at the Metropolitan Room asked me to start a songwriter group, and we've been going strong for 7 years. And in the last bout of MAC nominations, all 10 of the songwriting nominations were written by people affiliated with my group.
Wow.
And I have recently started a Spotify playlist.
Which is wonderful, by the way. I love your Spotify playlist.
Yeah. So that's a brand new thing. And what that is about is, saying that you have a song on Spotify is like saying that you have a book in the Library of Congress. It doesn't really mean anything. You've got to get people to get to it. And there are all these playlists on Spotify, and as my eyes were glazed over as I was trying to find out how to get my songs on them, it's like you got to go hat in hand, you got to beg people, you got to pay people. And I just said, screw it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to make my own playlist. I'm going to have people begging me to be on the playlist. And so I started this, and it's a monthly 10-song playlist. 2 of the songs will be by me, but the other 8 will be by, and the criteria for the other 8 is they have to be people that I know and or have met. And one of them is the Gone But Not Forgotten slot. So I did a song by Lou Spence, and I did a song by Dick Gallagher. There's only 1 out of the 10 that will always be by a songwriter that I don't know. And that's my playlist will always have a song by Taylor Swift, because Taylor Swift is brilliant. So that's it. It's 10 songs by people I know and Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
You know, and that's why I asked you to come on today. I mean, when I got your playlist on Saturday, and I think it was, I don't know why, it was the first time that I was aware of the playlist, number one. But I loved it. I listened to it straight through. Ann Hampton-Callaway, who I love. If you're listening, Ann, I want you on the show sometime. But Ann Hampton-Callaway asked on Facebook today if people listen to albums from start to finish the way that we used to. And I listened to the playlist. And whether it's intentional or not on your part, there's a theme that seems to go through with the songs that you choose. So and of course, Jay Rogers, who was my director for my show before he passed away. Well, obviously before he passed away. But Jay Rogers was such a light in my life. And to hear him singing on your playlist on Saturday really got to me. So kudos to that. I know, Judi, that you're going to have to go in a few moments. I'm watching the time with you. I'm not going to let it go over for you. Everyone, you're going to get a chance to give your final word. But I want to ask a question of each of you. And Judi, you can start if you want. But, you know, and without going into great detail, part of this brought you and me together.
Right.
But I want to know how outspoken you feel that we should be as artists. Dolly Parton, as we know, doesn't speak out about her political affiliations. Neither does Reba McEntire. And there are a few that say they won't do it. And then there are others. I have had the good fortune of being in the audience of Barbra Streisand. When Barbra Streisand you know where she stands. And Barbara's assistant, she and I are on the same page. So we're constantly, putting things out there. I think especially in today's world, right now, and I'm going to tell everyone that next Friday is National Gun Violence Prevention Day. And Ryan Busey, who has written the book Gunfight, he was a member of the NRA. He is a Republican, and he's written this brilliant book, is going to be my guest next Friday morning. So I'm very excited that we are going to talk about that, because that is something that I am very, very passionate about. And right now we've got this situation going on with Target, where they are pulling things off of their shelves. Pride Month is coming up in just a few days. And I heard in Wilton Manors, which is probably one of the gayest places on the planet, that they are not doing any drag shows for Pride for fear of retaliation in the state of Florida. So, and Whoopi Goldberg did an incredible talk yesterday morning about how, she's going to go to the drag punches and she's going to support drag queens because they're flamboyant and out there. And I will say that in the 20 years that I performed as Carol, it was never an issue. And now all of a sudden it has become an issue. Since I know that you have to go early, Judi, I'm going to let you go first. And I'd like to get your take on your feel about people being outspoken and being putting their personal message out in the world of social media nowadays.
I think it's such a personal decision. I really do. Because it also goes to how much you can tolerate the kind of negative feedback that you get. when you do that on that kind of a level, like putting something out on a Facebook page or something, or Instagram or whatever, as opposed to just in a one-on-one conversation with someone, which I think is different. So it's really about what you can tolerate. As you know, I think, Richard, my husband Tom is very outspoken,
which I love,
and he'll engage politically with anybody at any format, and really get in there. And he's a documentarian, right? So he's so fact-based that they really have a hard time arguing with him.
And he's written a great book, everyone, by the way, is What Do You Do with a Chocolate G?
Yeah, that's very funny.
Which is very funny. And it's a very funny book.
But yeah, I do it. I definitely do it on a one-on-one level when I'm talking to people. I'm very clear as to who I am and what I believe in and what I support and what I find distressing, especially since I'm now living in the state of Florida, right? So I feel an obligation to do that. And I do it with my California friends in talking to them about how different it is here politically, and how people try to walk a very fine line on a personal level. I think because they're afraid of who they might be talking to and not being sure what the other person's politics really are. So it's I think it's a very personal decision.
Okay. And do you have to leave us now?
I've got a couple of minutes. Well, actually, no, I should probably sign out.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap everything up, and we'll wrap it up with a nice little vote. Natalie and Quinn and Tom, you can stick around for just a few more minutes. Am I right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Judi. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Judi.
So, Natalie, I want to ask you the same question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious. I've always been a political creature. I grew up in a political family. My godfather was the mayor of Los Angeles for 20 years, so politics was the family business. And I'm also Black in America. I don't have an option. So I understand Judi's point of view completely, and I can respect that it is an option for her to not. But I feel that if you're Black in this country, if you're queer in this country, if you're AAPI in this country, you don't get that as an option. And if any of us could have solved racism, we already would. If Black people could solve racism, we would have done it already. We can't. It's on the people who created it. Sorry, that's you, white people. So we all have to participate in dismantling it. All of us. And it can be personal, one-on-one, what she was talking about, the way she speaks to friends or strangers even, but, on one-on-one conversations. But I think it has to be consistent and constant. And it costs me every day to live in this country. There are things that are uncomfortable. There are things that are painful. There are things that are frightening. There are things that are actually life and death to exist in this country. So I kind of don't have a lot of patience, though I try, for people for whom all I'm asking is for them to be uncomfortable occasionally. I'm not asking them to risk their lives. I'm not asking them to risk even their livelihoods. But to be outspoken and to not just let it go by because this time it's awkward, or this time it's Uncle George and he's just like that, and to always engage. That's what I believe, but I'm not in control of anybody else's behavior, so people do what they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, God bless you. I mean, there's a great movie, Gentleman's Agreement, which is about anti-Semitism in this country.
Yeah,
and
it's a great movie.
It's a great movie, but there's a moment.
And Gregory Peck was a brilliant supporter of my godfather. That's how I met him, actually.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a great moment in the film with John Garfield, where John Garfield, who is Jewish, and he's talking, I guess, with Dorothy McGuire. Mm-hmm. And Dorothy McGuire is telling a story about being at a party and someone telling an anti-Semitic joke. And he said, and how did you respond to it? And she basically sugarcoated the fact that she let it slide by. And he said, you can't afford to just let it slide by. And I think it's important. I want to talk about that. Each of you are going to get a chance to get your final word today beyond this question. So that's why I wanted to know if you could all stick around a little longer. Quinn, I want to ask you the same question.
I mean, I don't understand what's going on. And I think that we really need to take a stance in terms of where we support people, you know, or where we shop, you know. I don't understand, like, so much of the gay community, a lot of people are in Florida, and I don't understand why people are buying places down there right now or living there. And I would think that there would be a mass exodus, because these people are so financially and power driven that if there was a way, like, I won't shop at certain places. You know, it was interesting because, well, Natalie, I mean, you know, when you're on the road and you're in tertiary markets, it's scary. It's scary. Like, I go home to Indiana. Mike Pence is from my hometown, and it's scary. And you think, you see someone like that, and you go, how did you even, you know, exist, or how did you even get into power? And he was so awful to the gay community in Indiana. My sister is married to a woman, and I mean, the fighting, the protesting that we all had to do in Indiana. He also didn't want Obamacare to go into the state of Indiana. He started his own exchange because everybody's gonna pay. I mean, and that means marginalized people that are not white, Christian. Oh wow, that's a helicopter. I'm on Fire Island, you guys.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that we need to have an outspoken voice, and I think we also need to really think about where we shop. And it was interesting because we were playing in Georgia. We were doing our David Bowie show, and all my artists were gay, or are gay, and it was so funny because guess who the sponsor was? Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had never had a Chick-fil-A because I don't believe in their stance. It's like going to Hobby Lobby. I mean, I've never stepped foot in one of those. And I was like, I can't believe this. Here I have this fabulous show, and guess who the sponsor is?
Wow. Wow. Well, I also want to mention, I'm originally from South Carolina. Enough said. Tom, same question to you.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of things in life, it's a complicated issue. I mean, I think doing anything is hard. On the songwriting front, you know, I'm often just trying to get my songs heard by anybody. And you know, so I don't necessarily want to encumber a song with a political message, because then that makes it that much harder to get anybody to sing it if they're not aligned with whatever the political message might be. To wit, I wrote, I think it was a very funny, satirical, biting song called Heather a couple of years ago. And it was a gun control song. It's about Heather. The idea of the song is they ran out of Uzis for Heather. Heather teaches first grade. And this was a song about, you know, the movement to arm public school teachers, so that you know, the way to get a bad man with a gun is to have a good man with a gun. So I gave a complaint about how the school board wouldn't give enough money to get more Uzis for Heather, and she played Annie Oakley in stock, so she was good for having an Uzi in first grade. But, you know, you write a song like that, and it's just damn hard to get anybody to sing it. But another topic that we were talking about, which is, I guess, diversity. So, yeah, Natalie made that comment kind of in passing, and I took it seriously, and I asked her for recommendations to get some more representation in some shows. And I used actually the same guy, David Lamar, and a couple of other performers. But I used David in several shows that I did, Natalie, you'll be happy to know, including the Taylor Swift show that I produced. It's hard. You know, the Black community is not rallying around Taylor Swift, so it's hard to find black performers who want to sing Taylor Swift.
That's not true.
But David did a great job.
Taylor has quite the presence on Black Twitter. I mean, there are plenty of Black Taylor fans. There are plenty of Black country fans. We just don't get the attention or the spotlight. And I will say there is some Taylor's political or at one time apolitical stance was problematic for a lot of people. I know that she has since been more outspoken about what she thinks and what she believes, but for a long time she was not, and that was problematic.
Well, I didn't know that, but again, not a lot of people wanted political statements out of a 17.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. But it's just when you have, several billion people following you, that's an opportunity, and there were things happening that seemed like she should maybe be speaking to those girls in particular who are following her as women's rights are being stripped away,
My main message that I would say, Richard, to answer your question is, as a writer, as a producer, as an artist, is it's important to be in the world. And, whatever that means, be in the world, be interested in the world, be interested in people. One of the ways to I just look for the best performers I could find, and I'd like them all not to be of one race, but so then therefore the answer is meet more people.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank all of you. I think this is a very important message show today, and I love the fact that you all are activists in terms of the work that you put out there. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to give my final comments today, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Natalie, and then Quinn, and then Tom. You'll have the final word. And don't worry about how to end the show. As soon as you say goodbye, the final credits will roll. But just before COVID, I signed on with a management company. And when the preceding president was in the White House running during the Republican National Convention, I'm going to put it out there, he invited some Gold Star families to the White House. You may all remember that. And it really got under my skin because they were being used as pawns and props. And I spoke out about it. And I posted it on Facebook the next day that people needed to wake up to what was going on. Well, this management company that I had signed on with contacted me, and they said, you have to be very careful with what you are putting out there, because we want to book you around the country, and there are certain people that may have a different point of view, and they may not want to book you based on what you are putting out there publicly. And to appease them, I said, okay, I'll pull back. And then a friend of mine pointed out for me to go and check out their postings. And their postings were on the complete opposite side of what I was saying. And they were really pushing for Antonio Sapato Jr., who is very conservative. And as a matter of fact, they were working to get him his own studio in California, because they said he could not get work in Hollywood because of his political stance. And to me, it's not about Republican, Democrat. It's about saving our democracy. It's about saving each other. It's about being careful with every person has a place at the table when and if they are open. But when they bring an agenda to the table, they're not welcome at my table. And I think it's important that we all speak out. And a lot of us can say, that doesn't really concern me. Trust me, it concerns you. If they are upset about a drag queen brunch today, they could be careful tomorrow. They may not want to book someone who has red hair. Or the next day, they may not want to book somebody who has spectacular eyewear. There could be anything, all it takes right now. And please forgive me, the young girl who is the poet laureate at the
Amanda Gorman. Amanda Gorman.
They just took her poem out of schools in Florida because one parent was upset about it. And all it takes is one person to get out there and say, I don't like this, and therefore this person should not have a voice. It's important that those of us who have voices use those voices and speak out. And that's my message for everyone. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone, and I want all of you to do this today. Natalie, Quinn, Tom, everyone watching, pick up the phone and call someone that you have not spoken to in a long time, just to let them know that they matter in your life. Because it may be too late tomorrow or the day after that. It's important that we take the time to do so. And I don't mean an email or a text message or a private inbox message, a phone call, and let that person know that they have made a difference in your life. I have a dear friend. He says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different size boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. And with that, I'm going to leave the screen. And Natalie, it's all yours. Thank you.
That's great. I love that. It's been a treat to get to see Quinn and Tom, even virtually, and Richard and Judi, of course. This is, I just got back into town, and it's a wonderful way to bounce back into my New York life. But it's great to hear that your guys are so busy and the things that you're working on, and also to connect with you as people, because we're so often racing past one another at shows, and there's the wonderful hug, and then we go off to do a million other things, and it's great to spend some time with you. What Richard said really resonates with me in terms of how fleeting this all is, and the moments we have with people, we never know which is the last. So I'm happy to spend time with you and happy to share these conversations with you about these important things, all of it, I hope that we get to do more of this. I hope I get to see you all again very soon. Oh, and I'm supposed to plug, yes, I will be in Indiana next weekend at Carmel at Feinstein's, at Carmel with the Back to the 60s show. And then I'm going to be at Birdland on June 19th with the Juneteenth show. And anybody listening, I'd love to have you at any of those shows, no matter what you believe politically. We might learn from each other, Thanks a lot. That's it.
Bye, Natalie. Beautiful. I will tell everyone in Indiana. That's where my hometown is, near Carmel. Anyway, I just think, Tom, this has just been so wonderful, and to hear everyone. And I think that the best takeaway is that life is precious, and how we other one another, and we need to enjoy every moment that we have with everyone, and really also, you never know what somebody else is going through. And so as we communicate with people, whether it's the person at Duane Reade or at the grocery store or the dog walker, you don't know, because like for me, I lost my husband unexpectedly within 48 hours, and you don't know, or somebody's getting married, or they're having a baby, or they lost a child, you don't know. So I think that we need to be kind to one another, and, think of our opportunities to connect, like Richard said. And so I'm going to listen to the skipper. Good night.
All right, Quinn, good night.
Thank you.
Wow. So I guess it's all mine now. What I'm taking away from this, and what I deeply believe in, is about the connection. I feel the connection with Natalie, and the connection with Quinn, and the connection with Richard. That's why I do it. That's why I write songs, is to connect with people. There's not enough money in it, at least in my end of the game. There's not enough money in it to be working with people that you're not interested in or that you don't like. Work with people that you like, connect with people that you do like, write songs for people that you like. I hope that people reach out and sing my songs. Quinn, when you're done with when you do your Rita Hayworth show, include a new song of mine or of somebody else's, a song that Rita Hayworth might have sung had she been alive today. That's a good way to work that in. And so support living songwriters and sing songs by living songwriters. That's what it's kind of all about to me. And We talked about my connection with Natalie. It was at 54 Below that I saw her at a show when she made her comment about seeing shows that weren't made up exclusively of white faces. I remember that, and I took her advice. Quinn, I thought about you the other night. I was at the Players Club at an event, and the last time I was at the Players Club, it was with Elliot Ames, and he passed a few months ago, as we talked about, and I know you were good friends with him. So I did think of you that night as well. So I'm grateful for this chance to be on the program with you, to be interviewed by Richard, and for the connection. And as far as promotion, we put up the image before. I've got a show at 54 Below, September, I think it's 17th or 19th, called the Harvard-Yale Cantata. I hope that if you're listening to this show and if you're interested in that, you come to it. It is a competition of September 17th. It's a competition of Harvard alums against Yale alums singing songs written by Harvard alums and Yale alums. And it's always a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you so much, Richard, for this opportunity. Great to see you as always. Quinn and Natalie, great to be on the show with you. Bye, everybody.